Hey folks, welcome back to the shop. Today we have this 2012 Softail Heritage Classic that has come back in for a charging issue. So we're going to be changing the stator, the rectifier, the wiring for that, the rotor, all that good stuff on this 103 motor. And this is the third stator and rectifier this bike has had on it probably in the last year. So something is going on with this charging system. Something keeps frying these stators. So we're going to try to diagnose that, fix that, then replace this charging system with a good upgrade for it. Welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. Now, there's not going to be a lot of jabbering and chewing the cud on this video, because I got to knock this out because I want to get back on the iron head build, and also we're going to build an Evo chopper from the frame up. So it's time to start working on that and building that up. So let's get this fixed and get into it. I want to drop the primary oil, but I want to take this seat off, see what's going on. If this is a metal seat underneath, maybe it's hitting the battery. If there's some wiring in the charging system that maybe is shorting out, something's going on that just keeps eating stators up. Maybe it's the rotor and one of the magnetic things have fallen off. We did buy an upgraded kit. And listen, when you have stators go out and rectifiers go out, just a word of advice: don't buy the cheap stators. Go ahead and invest in a Cycle Electric made in the USA stator. Those things last so much longer than just a regular stator. And I would suggest upgrading your amperage. So we went to a 50 amp Cycle Electric stator and a 50 amp rectifier, where the rectifier can do the 32 or the 50, and also new wiring. And we're going to upgrade the rotor with the magnet that's one piece all the way around and got the metals insert inside it, so there's no chance of a magnet falling and hitting one of your stator coils and ruining the stator. So I hope this is going to be a good fix for them, because here's the worst thing. It's when you buy the parts and you fix your bike, and then 3 months later, the same thing happens again. That's frustrating, and that's a waste of money. So I was like, let's invest in it, get the top quality things we can get, and check all the wiring. I know that on this bike, he did have some additions as far as electronics on it and stuff, but I think he's taken most of that off since then, and he's still having these issues. So there's some diagnosing that we've got to do. So before we put all the new stuff in, we want to check things wiring wise, so that we don't fry the brand new stuff, because this new stuff's pretty expensive. So I'm going to take this seat off now, and then we'll, oh gosh, it's on tight. Want to just check the condition of the battery. Make sure the wiring that feeds back to the rectifier is good. You know, the charging system is kind of a standalone system, so there's not really things that can interfere with it, as far as, you know, if you had a bad wire under the tank or something like that. It's usually not going to affect the charging system. Now, it could overload, but you have fuses for that. So you would think in an overload or a situation where something grounds out, a hot wire grounds out, it would pop a fuse and not, you know, tear up your stator and stuff. So we're going to check this out. And okay, it is a metal seat on the bottom. I don't see any burn marks where the battery might have been. He did tell me he added this little pad as a protection in case, and I don't see that it's been wore down. And it does have the little cover still over it, although it's not setting down on there right, but the battery seems like it's in good shape. Now, he did take it to Harley to verify, I think he was out on a ride and there was a Harley close by. He stopped there. They did verify that the stator's not putting out, but I want to go ahead and just see what the battery is, start the bike, and verify for myself that it's not charging back. Just, let's just go through the wiring and check everything before we put new parts on it. All right, we have a 12-4 on the battery. Put the little key fob up here so it's close. I just want to check the voltage drop on this. Drops to a 12-1. Sounds good, but indeed it is not putting out any voltage. Had a 12-5, turned the key on, dropped to a 12-1, started up, it was running out of 12-0. So nothing's coming back here. So what I want to do now, I want to turn the key back on and look for any codes. Those codes are usually good indicators of something going on in the system that would lead us to checking wiring that might be causing this to burn up stators. All right, so I tried to get you in here. I don't know if you'll be able to read this or not, but we're just going to check, see what codes might be on the bike. Now, there was no check engine light coming up, but it might have a code that might be stored in there. So to do that, on this model, it has a trip button right here, so there's no side button that you would hold in. Instead, you hold this in. So you make sure the run switch is on. You hold this button in. This will actually come up. Switch the key on while holding this button. And then this will read Diagnostics. Then you can let go of the button and you just click once. All right, it says ECM and it has a Y. That means, yes, there is a code in the ECM. You click it just once again. The BCM system, it has an N, so there's no codes in the BCM. The speedometer, SPDO system, there's an N, there's no codes in that. Back to our diag. All right, so I'll click again and get back to the ECM. Y, yes, we have a code. To get into that, to see what the code is, you just hold the trip button down, and then your codes will be displayed. So we have a P0562 code that is stored on this bike. It doesn't look like it's present because there's no check engine lights on, but we have that code. Now we'll hit the trip one more time, just click it, see if there's any more codes stored, and it says END, E-N-D, so there's no more codes than that. Now if you wanted to, this is just your PIN number. If you wanted to get back out of that, you just click again and you're back to the main menu. Okay? Now, we're not going to clear this off yet because we might still be doing some diagnostics. So let's turn this off now. Okay, so the code that was thrown on the bike, the P0562, I believe, that's the low voltage code that comes up. Usually there's a battery light that comes up, but this battery seems to, when the bike was running, had dropped. I believe the threshold is a 10.5 or 11. So when it drops below that, it'll throw that code, but usually a battery light will come on as well on these models, indicating that the battery, there's an issue with that. So the battery light is of course not on because this is reading 12.4, 12.5. So this battery I believe to be good, because if you had a bad battery, it dropped below that threshold, say 10.5, this battery would not go back up when it's turned off to 12.4. So I think the battery's good. I know that we replaced this not long ago, but there is a maxi fuse here that I do want to check. So this is a little maxi fuse. It's got a main fuse, it's got a battery fuse, and then it's got a PA system fuse in here as well. So we'll just pull these tabs back, pull this off. There's a little weather stripping thing in there we'll lay aside. Let me put them down here. Don't want them falling down in there where I can't get them out. So here's your maxi fuse here. You've got a big, huge 40 fuse, and then you got two 15s. This would be your battery fuse. Now you can pull them out and you can hold them up to the light and you can look at them and you can say, yep, that's good. Hold that one up. Yep, that's good. But don't do that. Sometimes fuses will look good and they are indeed not good. Sometimes they don't blow right in the middle. So I'll turn this over to the horseshoes, and what I want to do is set it to where it makes a sound, and I'm looking for continuity. Now the good thing about these fuses is they have little metal tabs in the top that are connected to the metal, I guess, rods, tabs that go down. So you can test these fuses by just putting one there and putting one here. If there is continuity, then there is a connection between those two and your fuse is then good. Here's the battery one. Okay. So there's nothing going on as far as in our fuses. All right, so I went ahead and dropped the bracket for the rectifier. I just went ahead and unplugged that. It has this little clip here that comes down that holds this on. This is the side that runs back to the bike. You have a ground, you have a hot. The hot feeds back into the battery. Then on this side you have a 3-prong. That's where your stator plugs in, and then this just clamps down over the stator. Now on this model there are some other wires here, but they just connect together and are held at the bottom of this bracket here. So they're not necessarily anything related to the charging system. So you have the 3-prong here that runs to your stator, and then the 2 here that runs back to your battery. So a good way to test the wires is to hook. All right, let's get this over here where we can see it. We'll set it to horseshoe. Turn the light on for you. Make a noise. I've got a clip on one end for the battery terminal and then just a probe on the other. All right, green light and a buzz. All right, so I'm going to hook this onto the positive battery terminal. If it'll reach, I might have to move you. Okay, I'm going to have to move you so you can see because this won't reach. But on here, I'm going to put this in. If you pull this harness back, you'll see a black and a red wire. So I'm going to hook this into the red. Now I'll have to probably come over here and hold it. I'm going to move this up here on the floorboard so we got room. And I'm going to bring you on this other side. Okay, so I want to just put my little clip here. I wish they'd made these clips a little bit longer and the teeth and a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay. So one end on the hot terminal, the other probe in the hot side. And as you can see in here, we do have connection. So coming right off the rectifier, we have continuity all the way to the battery. Now we'll test the other side, which is the ground side. So I'll move the clip over to the ground terminal on the battery, and then I'll probe that black wire that's running on the right side of the bike. Okay, so we have ground continuity that's running from the rectifier all the way back to the battery. So our wiring as far as the charging system is good. However, there's one more thing to check that could be causing our issues. Okay, so we're on the right side of the bike, right underneath the stand, looking up at the wiring. The rectifier will be up here. The two prongs we already tested, but you need to find where that wire is. Pull on it, yank on it, and then inspect the wires. Because sometimes these wires can get frayed due to the vibration of the bike. Harleys vibrate like a beast. And so you want to look at the harness and the sheathing around it, and you want to look for any signs of rubbing and wearing. Now, so far this looks good back here. This is nice and free and floating. It comes through a little brace up there. It looks good. I'm not feeling anything, but let me show you something right here. So here are the wires that run from the front of the rectifier back to the battery, and it's housed in a harness with some other wires as well for the O2 sensors and things like the crank sensor and things like that. So if you look right here, it goes over this bracket, this brace that holds on for your shocks. But the brace is not sharp or anything. It's nice and rounded and smooth, and they do that so that it does not cut into this harness. So I'm just going to lift this up and try to look under there best I can and make sure that harness isn't cut through or worn through, and it looks good. So that's an area to check. If the machinist at Harley didn't do a good job from the factory of smoothing that bracket out, it will eventually cut through that wiring harness and cut into your wires, and could be a cause for grounding out that stator and frying it. Now you would primarily see that if you had a lot of blown fuses. This one doesn't have blown fuses. It's just got low battery. So I'm still suspecting it's the rotor and not in the wiring, which is good because it saves them a lot of money of me going through each and every wire. But I do want to take the time to inspect the harness and then look at it as it follows through here. And then the harness goes up. I will follow it all the way up into the oil tank and check for any rubbing or spots there. And everything has the original zip ties on it. Nothing's been replaced down here. Nothing's been tore. Nothing has dropped down and got caught underneath the frame or hit. So it looks like we're in good shape as far as the wiring, but that is one area right there. You do want to check and run your finger under and make sure that, you know, the harness is still intact. If you see a cut in that harness, it's like a paper cloth harness. If you see a cut in that harness, that's bad news. Now, another tip I want to point out is that if you're looking for a hot wire that might be grounding out from time to time, maybe under the vibration or a certain way, just the bike hits a bump or something like that, an easy way to test for that is just take one end of your probes on continuity and go into the hot wire, and then put the other end with the alligator clip onto your ground. Then with that, you can reach your hand up in the wires where you think it's possible that they could be grounding out, and move them around and wiggle them and press on them and play on them and tug on them. And if it does have a place where the hot wire is grounding out, it will have continuity that when it touches that ground. So I'm not seeing any of that. I'm pulling on both ends. I'm rubbing up where it crosses over that. I'm rubbing up around the frame. So I suspect that this wiring is good. So now let's test the stator just to verify, because I think that's what it is. I think that rotor and magnets may be the one that's come loose or is rubbing intermittently when that stator or when the rotor spins. The stator stays stationary, that rotor spins. So let's go to the other side now. Now that we have the three prong harness disconnected, we can easily test the stator. There's a continuity test and an amperage test that we can, or voltage test we can check. So now we're on the other side of the bike. We're going to test the stator. I've got the plug disconnected from the rectifier. This is a 3-pin. If you have an older Harley, it'll have a 2-pin. I believe Harley's still using these, even in the Milwaukees. They're the 3-pin. We're going to set it on horseshoe. I'm going to set it over to where we get a beep. I've got my black terminal on this multimeter hooked straight to the negative on the battery, so we can check. Okay, I got ground. I've got good ground. Okay, so we do not want any of these 3 phases in this stator to be grounded. That means that something's happened with the rotor and it has indeed grounded out. So we'll start here, and there is, as you can see, there's something grounding out in that stator. That should not do that. That should not do that. And that should not do that. This immediately tells me stator's bad. The stator has grounded out onto something. Probably the rotor, as I'm guessing. So do this test first. That will tell you the culprit. Now I wanted to check the other wiring just because he's been eating through stators. So that's why I started on that end. But a good place to start is right here. Now, other tests that you can do is to take it off the negative side of the other terminal, and then you'll check one in one hole on the horseshoe and one in the other hole as well. You're checking for resistance, and it should be anywhere between 0.1 and 0.3. And you have to, when you do that, let me snap this off here. When you do that kind of test, you have to look at the resistance of your lines. Now, this is a good multimeter. Usually the resistance of my 2 connectors are 0. We'll give it time to settle down. Yeah. So I wouldn't add anything, but if you had a multimeter that your lines, once they're connected, had like a 0.1 or 0.3 resistance in your lines, you would have to add that into whatever you got. So let me just show you real quick, although we don't have to do that on this bike. We know that stator is grounded out to something. You just stick it in one hole here and one in the other. So I'm not getting, yeah, see, I'm getting nothing there. We'll stick this in the other hole, and then you just swap and do the other terminals, making sure that you've checked all 3. If all that checks out good, then you can start the bike and look for your voltage. Now, the voltage is not going to be in DC, but the voltage is going to be in AC out of the stator. The rectifier converts that into DC. So on this side of the charging system, it's an AC. So you'd start the bike, you would ground out one of your prongs to a good ground, and then you would, in each hole, see what your voltage is while the bike's running. And you check all 3 holes. But because of that grounding out test, we know it's grounded out in the stator. So let's go ahead and start pulling off the primary, the outer primary. We'll drain the oil, pull the outer primary off. We'll have to probably remove the floorboard as well, or some of this stuff to get it just in there. And then get our primary chain clutch basket off and a sprocket, and then pull the rotor and see what's going on. All right, we'll slap our, we'll pull our 5/8 plug here out. Get this oil draining, and we'll pull this inspection cover off. That it's got to come off anyway, because that's how we're going to add the oil back into it, and that'll help it drain out a little bit quicker for us. It's a good time also to check for any kind of debris. That's just the wrap that I had put on there last time for the plumber's tape, just so the oil would not leak out. But as you can see, there's not much material at all in this plug. This job was probably done, I don't know, about maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And he's having the same issue again. The oil smells good. I smell some clutch, but it's normal. So to remove this footrest, we're going to separate it from the linkage up here. 7/16 and 7/16 here. I'm just going to break that free. Separate this. Move this out, and I'll go ahead and run the spacer and the nut back on there and let that set. Now we can remove this entire floorboard. And to do that, it's a T45, I believe. That's just 3 bolts and 4 if you want to disconnect it from the crash bar. But I think if we just do the 3 bolts that's on the frame, we can kind of swing this up out of the way. I want to try that first. What's good for me is that I know I did this job 4 months ago, and then when I go back to do it again, I know I'm the last one to have touched any of these bolts. And it's just kind of reassuring to feel that, hey, they're in there tight, they're in there good. So that's always fun as a mechanic. Now we should be able to swing. No, up's not going to work for us. Okay, I'm just going to have to take it off from the crash bar. So the crash bar has a nut behind it. I believe it's a 9/16 nut, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Now we'll just remove this. All right, now this whole assembly can come off. I'll grab my washer and my nut to put back on there. We can set the whole floorboard aside with the shifter levers. We didn't have to take the levers off or adjust, worry about getting things lined back up as far as where his foot shift's set. So everything's good now. Here's the 3 bolts that held the floorboard onto the frame, and then the 1 bolt here for the crash bar. Now that's opened up everything. And our oil has stopped coming out. We didn't even have to take the cover off to get it to drain better. So now we're ready for this whole thing to come off. Now before you do that, have a nice clean space laid out where you can set all your stuff, or back here, wherever you have. Do that before you pull all these things off, because it's going to be messy, and don't want you to drop nothing or set something somewhere and it fall off, or never set it on the bike, of course. So let's get our 3/16 Allen head socket, and let's just start crisscrossing to take off so we don't warp anything, and then we can get into our inner primary. All right, some of these bolts will be different lengths, but it's easy to know where they go. I like to start down here at the bottom. I'll just loosen one. I'll come up here, loosen this one. I'll come down here, loosen this one. I have rags ready, because when this primary shell starts to separate, you will get oil that will leak down here. All of these bolts have been torqued, so they feel good and secure. Now that you got them all broken loose, you can just use a gun to go around there and zip them off, and then lay this somewhere where it's protected. You don't want to scratch any of this up or any of this here where it's going to lay. If you don't feel comfortable, just go ahead and take this off. Then you don't have to worry about getting this scratched up or sliding around. on a lift or a table or something like that. All right, the bolts around your stator here are going to be long bolts. Everywhere else on this model, now your model might be different, the bolts are going to be substantially shorter and threaded all the way, where these are longer. Now with the Loctite that I put on there last time, we will need to clean these threads up. Okay, so there's our 4 long bolts that go kind of around the stator. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are longer because they actually go past the inner primary and down into your motor. So they actually thread into your motor through the inner primary into your motor. So that's why you'll find these 4 to be longer. And then all of these, they don't go into your motor. So they're going to be shorter. All right, on your last bolt, hold your primary up. Spin that last one out. Then this is ready to come off. And catch it and spin it around. That'll catch most of the oil. And then we'll get our rags ready. Stuffed up in there. Go get some more rags to clean up. And then we'll go set this somewhere safe. We'll be replacing this gasket, even though I just put it on about 4 months ago, but you never know. Now we can move our oil out of the way. And I'm going to take all these bolts, instead of leaving them on the lift, and the chance of losing one or misplacing one, we got to clean them up anyway. I'm just going to put them down inside the primary cover. Okay, now we're ready to remove the whole assembly here, the chain, the clutch basket, sprocket. All right, to get this out, you would normally, undo this nut, then back this out, and then take your snap ring off. But we're not going to do that. Because I'm not adjusting anything in the clutch pack itself, and everything looks to be really nice and clean and in good operating condition. All the sprocket teeth look good on both sides, even the starter sprocket gear. Everything looks good, so I'm not going to be adjusting the clutch. So all I'm going to do is go to the cable, let off the pressure on the cable by the adjustment nut. Then I'm going to get a snap ring in here and take this whole assembly out. That way I leave the adjustment of the clutch where it is. Then when I get ready to put the basket back on, I put it back on, I do the reverse nut back on, then I just slide this back on, snap it back in, and our clutch is adjusted exactly how it was before. So just a good tip for you, not to mess with that if you're not adjusting the clutch itself. Now it is wise to take the pressure off of the clutch. However though, if you notice, there's no pressure on the clutch rod until you push the clutch in, then pressure comes out. So a lot of times you don't even have to mess with the cable. Okay, I believe, if I remember correctly, these were the ones to use. They fit in those holes rather well. I will remove those out. Oh, there went the ring. And then this whole assembly here can just come out. Now the rod you don't want to take out, you want to leave that back in there. And now that exposes the nut, which is a reverse thread, a backwards thread, a left-handed thread, whatever you call it. But you tighten it normally and that loosens it. So the size for this nut is a 1 3/16. And again, we're going to tighten it. We're going to rotate it clockwise. That's going to loosen this. When you have an impact, it's really no issue. This will have a colored sleeve on it. So I'm going to set this with the drain plug over on the primary. Okay, a 13/16 socket is what it is. And with this big impact I got, we'll try it without holding anything. Yeah, there we go. Very good. Usually don't have trouble with these if you have the big impact. All right, so that bolts out. I'll go stick it over with the primary. All right. Now we can take this whole assembly off here together. So this whole thing here comes out, this spacer here, that kind of keeps the tension on everything. I'm going to set it there for now because I want to go ahead and remove this, hold this and then go ahead and pull this basket off. It's important to keep this chain in the orientation of which it was going and not to flip the chain over. So you want to kind of keep the chain on here so that you know you got it in the right orientation. If you were to take this chain and mix it up and then flip it around backwards not knowing, then it could ride weird and make noise in there. So let's just go ahead and pull this off the shaft here and set this to the side all together. Now we can take this whole assembly off here. You'll find shims, concave, convex, contour, all that. And then this right here will come off. So what I like to do is just stick it all back on there the way I pulled it off. Take this and stick in here as well. And I've got everything together when I set it down. Now last time this was here, his primary chain adjuster was shot. So we did replace it, and it's a good time to inspect it. It looks good. There's not even any grooves in it yet. Some people don't like the auto chain tensioners. They say it gets the chain too tight, but as you could see earlier, the chain wasn't too tight on these. There's aftermarket ones that don't have this spring adjustment thing, so you could do that. But if you wanted to zip tie this down and stuff like that, you could do that, but I'll show you a way. You don't have to worry about this much. It's not in the way of anything we're doing here. Just when you go to put the chain back on, we're going to have to pull this back and adjust this down and then zip tie it so that it doesn't move until we get our stuff on. Cut the zip tie, pull it out, and then it tensions back. So now we're ready to get this rotor off and to see what the issue was. Now the rotor will be magnetized. You're going to feel some resistance, and then you're not. It's going to come on off on you. So I just like to use some hook picks to hook in there and the hook in here and just kind of wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. I'm wiggling off this spline here, and you notice if I let go, it magnetizes back. But once you get it past a certain spot, it comes on off. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and just bring it out with those. There we go. What in the world is going on? Okay, I was expecting a magnet to be broken, to be laying down on the stator. This rotor's good. The rotor looks good. The magnets look good. I don't see any sign at all of the rotor magnets hitting the stator. Well, maybe a little right there. No, that's just my rag. All the magnets are in here good. None of them have come apart, but as you can see, as I'm going to show you, whew, it burnt up bad. Okay, what a mess. Whew, and I smell it too. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Maybe that's okay. So almost half this stator is fried. Absolutely fried. Whoever replaced the stator originally, wasn't me, but they have dremeled right here this casing. And the reason you do that, for some reason, in certain year models like this one, Harley designed these inner primaries to where you have to pull the inner primary to get the rotor off to change your stator. And it was just a little lip right here that caused it. And so you can take a Dremel like somebody did here. I don't think I did this, but it kind of looks like some I've done in the past. And you just take your Dremel and Dremel out just this little ridge here. You don't Dremel out here. It doesn't change anything. There's no strength issues involved or anything. then you can get that primary out, or that rotor out. The way you do it with the rotor on is you do a little Dremel. You think it's good, and you try to pull the rotor out, and you'll see if it catches. Then put the rotor back, do it again, do that until the rotor just clears and comes out. That's all you need. And as you can see, it's not much material taken off at all. For some reason, I just had a little ridge here that ran all the way out to the end, and that causes the rotor not to come off. So we'll do a 227s here. There's 4 bolts. Do not reuse these bolts. These bolts are torqued to yield, and inside here, understand, gets extremely hot. There's no breathing on this system, and so the oil and everything in the primary on these models get extremely hot. So we're going to go ahead and, this is just coming off in my hands. Let's go ahead and get this out, and then kind of look at it from the back side, see if something, I don't know, if something failed in the wiring in the back of it, or if it just got hot and burnt up. Now when you replace these 227s, they'll come with a blue Loctite already on them. You just throw them in there and torque them down. Throw those bolts away. I know you're tempted to put them back in there, but guys, don't do that. You could cause thousands of dollars worth of damage by just simply not replacing a $20 pack of bolts or whatever they are. Some kits you get come with new bolts in them. That's good. All right, now our stator is free from the motor, and now we can just wiggle it off there. And you want to be careful of these splines here. So you should have enough room to clear, and then we should be able to just cut these wires here and then get all of this out here. Alrighty. 1, 2, 3. We can go ahead and pull these wires out. It's a good thing also to check the wires as they went through the primary, make sure nothing, went into them. And I'll take a pocket knife over here, and I'll just, now that we got the wires out, just cut this grommet off. And then I can pull all of this just out of the hole here. And take our little flat blade screwdriver or whatever and push the rest of it out the hole. Now you want to make sure you clean in there really good, especially with that stator looking like it was. Also a good time to check out your race. Make sure it's good, not grooved and cut up. Alright, so I'm going to pause here, let the customer come up, check out that burn up, destroyed primary or stator. And then we'll get back to putting in all the new stuff. Before I leave you for just a second, let me show you the new Softail electric stator compared to the old. Okay, so here is the old stator. Here's the new Softail electric. You can find these Softail electric ones on Amazon. And you're like, man, why are they so cheap? They're not Softail electric. Softail electric has their business stamped into here. It says Softail electric, and it says made in the US, and then a part number there. Don't buy a knockoff. You can tell that this is a good built stator. It is sturdy, it's heavy. It has the fillings in here that this one does not have. That protects the main 3 wires where your coils all wrap to and come out the back. This one has nothing like that. It's just got this brace here that holds the wires back. So this, to me, is a lot better build quality. And if you look at the magnets on top, they're much, much thicker magnets than a cheap eBay or Amazon one. Even, I think these are even better than the stock ones. If you went to Harley and bought one, it would not be built as good as this and sturdy. Man, this thing's heavy. And look at the beauty in the coil wrapping and just the precision and the care to detail. That's what I like. And of course the plugs are the same, but now what you have is where this goes into your case. This part right here is smaller, so there's less chance of interference when I run this in and I run this back through here. Same setup where it plugs into the rectifier. It says in the instructions to pop just this first one out where it's exposed on the outside of the case. And then this is much smaller. The old one, oh, where did I put it? The old one of these, the just generic one, was huge. You know, and if that thing kind of vibrates and turns and then catches in the rotor, it could pull the wires. Of course, it didn't happen on this one. And so I really like, and another thing that I noticed, the way they glued these wires in, these wires come straight back. Then when you go to put this in, you've got this nice curve here, okay? So that your rotor is in no way going to get into that. These, on the other hand, ones like this, these wires, gosh, I can stick them all the way up through the top. Okay, so not good at all. And it did come with some goodies. It came with new bolts, and they already have the Loctite on them. And anytime that you use an aftermarket bolt that's not a Harley Davidson bolt, you need to look at what they recommend as far as the manufacturer of the torque spec. So these are torqued to 50 to 70 inch-pounds. So I'll split the difference and I'll do 60. And it says that they already have locking compound already applied. It's not blue like the Harleys, but it's brown. I don't know what the difference in that is. But it does come with some instructions for you to read, pretty simple instructions. So I would highly recommend the Softail Electrics products. I wish that they carried a rectifier and a rotor for this. So I went with a good Drag Specialties regulator, 50 amp. And a good V-twin rotor. I'll show you the rotor to compare the difference. It's pretty cool. Okay, so here is the old rotor. It is stock. It's, you know, still looks like it's in good shape to me. I think, you know, the stator is just a cheap stator. And then here is the upgraded, well, they're magnetized. I gotta be careful. Here's the upgraded one. As you can see, it's magnets, but it's encased in this metal sleeve. So there's no chance of a magnet falling out and hitting your stator and getting caught up in your primary chain or anything like that. As far as price comparisons, this was a much more, maybe $10, $15 more than a stock rotor. So really, really nice upgrade. This is by V-twin. And then our regulator rectifier is a 50 amp by Drag Specialties. Now we're ready to go back in with the new stator. Just feed this in the hole. And we'll pull it out. We'll be careful of this right here. We'll feed it out till that first little lip comes out. We'll set this up in here. All right, we'll make sure that our tab back here is oriented flush with the bike. We'll line up our bolt holes. And then according to the Softail Electric paper that they sent, we'll torque these down to anywhere from 50 to 70 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. But I want to go shoot the middle. Oh, gosh. I put the old bolts back in. These new Softail Electric bolts that come with the stator, they are not T27s. They're actually Allen heads. And it is a 5/32. So I'm going to go to 60 inch-pounds. Now we're ready for our rotor to go back on. All right, we have our new upgraded rotor, and you want to make sure that you hold this as you put it on so that it doesn't slam into your new stator. Now let's go ahead and get this primary chain tension back down and holding so it won't be in our way when we go to put everything back on. Okay, so the way we'll do this, we'll just raise this up, and then the way that this works is you have this spring right here, and this rod, you have a grooved ramp here, and this right here is grooved as well on this bottom and up here on this top. So the idea is you can bring this all the way back here, and as this raises up, it will click up and self-adjust to keep the proper tension on that chain. Now some people say, well, sometimes you can really get on the bike, the chain will kind of slap and this will come up way too much and to keep too much pressure on the chain. I've never ran into that issue. I guess it could be an issue, but I've never seen that happen. Of course, you don't want your primary chain too tight. That puts tension back here on your bearing, on your race, and just, not good. But I've never seen that happen. The aftermarket kits are different. So let's pull this back. Then I'll push this down to hold this down. Then I'll run a zip tie up like this and down through here. And I'll get this zip tie tight while I'm holding this down. Okay. And then that'll keep this down out of the way. And when we put the chain on, we'll cut this and then the tension will come back up. So first off, you have this gear here. It is flat on this side and it's grooved on this side. So the flat part goes against the rotor. Just slide it on. And this grooved part is intended for this big sleeve here to fit over that, down in that groove. So now we'll put things back as they were. We have this concaved spacer here. Another concave that goes facing against it. So it makes like a dish. But in a smaller concave that comes out. Smaller concave that goes in against that. Makes another dish. Then you have this small ring that goes out to keep pressure. Then you have this. And if you'll notice on the back side of this here, it's almost like it was like a brake disc kind of. And you don't want to remove that or damage that. It actually moves, and that just helps to lock things down. But you do want it clean. And now in that position now, we're ready for the rest of the bike to go on. Okay, so I got everything torqued down now. The clutch hub bolt. Manual says 140. Some guys say no, 160. I do 150. It's a little bit more than the manual. Red lock tight. Clutch hub nut, I do 80. I think there's a variance. I'll try to split the difference. And this tensioner, for some reason, I pushed this back and this didn't set all the way down. So once I did that, this came down a whole lot. You might can get away with just leaving this alone once you zip tie it down, because it moved down a whole bunch. I put it on, I'm like, man, why is this not fitting on? Something's wrong with this. And it's where this was just not setting down properly. You saw how that expanded out. And now I like to kind of pull on it a little bit, flop with it, play with it, make sure everything's good. So now we're ready to go ahead and put in our clutch adjuster mechanism and then the snap ring that goes on that. Now remember, we didn't adjust anything on the clutch. So everything's adjusted well and then fine. We didn't even take off any slack on the cable, so I'm hoping that'll go right back in there without having to take the slack out. So we'll see. Okay, here's our adjuster, and since we did not take the nut off, we know which end goes which. But in case you do separate these, this has out on it, goes on the outside. So we'll slide that in, and then we'll load up our spring, All right, so on these springs, I like to go ahead and load them. And now what I'm going to aim for, because these needles go through here so far, if you go to try to put this side on, it's going to press them out. So what I like to do is get the top of this spring started in, and I find I have better luck doing that, like that up there. So now our clutch is back in. I'm going to move these around like that down there. Then I'm going to take a little flathead screwdriver and tap, because I don't like how that spring there is not setting down. There we go. She popped in then. Now I'll go up to the clutch lever. I'll pull it in and out a couple times and see what we got. Perfect. And now his clutch is set exactly the way his clutch was before. And I can look around here and see that it's in all the grooves, nice and well. Now we're ready for the new gasket. I'll clean up all the surfaces around here. Make sure our dowels are still in our inner primary. They usually stay in there pretty good. Usually don't have an issue with them. I'll also clean up the surface of our outer primary cover. And then we're ready to go on with our gasket and our primary. And I'll get a bolt just to put up in here to hold everything. All right, we'll go ahead and set our gasket on. Alrighty, and then our cover goes up and just lines up according to the dowels in the hole. I'll put one just in here just to hold it and get the other threads and all cleaned up. And these are all going to be set up to 110 inch-pounds. That's what I like to do on these. Could do 120. 110 I think works fine. I really don't like giving out torque specs because every bike is a little different and wear and tear on them is a little different, and how much you reuse them and take them on and off are a little different. So I usually try to stay away from naming a torque spec. Okay, I'll get all these bolts kind of run in hand tight, and then we'll talk about the order of sequence of how these go. Our long bolts, remember, they go around the stator. There's 4 of them. I got some new Loctite the other day, and finally my old one ran out, and it's like a gel kind of, pretty neat, but I think it's going to be wasteful. Doesn't seem to get down in the threads too good. Okay, now that they're all hand tight, I'm going to do 110 inch-pounds. Always look the torque specs up for your specific bike. Don't take my word or anybody's word for it. Please look it up. So here's where we start. 1, right in the middle in the bottom. That's where you want to start your torque. Then you'll go up to the top and do 2. Come to the bottom down here to the left and do 3. Come to the top to the left, working toward the front. 4. These long bolts, same torque. 5. The top here. 6. Still working toward the front. 7, 8. Then you'll do 9 up here on top. Then you'll do 10 down here. 11 here. 12 here. And 13 here. Okay. Now I'll go around in a circle and just check all these torques. I want to hear a good click. And the reason that's important to always torque these down in that order is you don't warp this primary cover and you don't have oil leaks after. Now we could have probably, you know, if this was my bike, I could have probably reused that primary gasket because it was only 3 months old. It looked in good shape. But if you don't get that thing lined exactly right up where it's supposed to, where it's indented and grooved from the past, it could leak on you. And since this is a customer's bike, we take no chances in that. I'm sure he's going to give this a good bath after it gets it back. But now that's done. Let's get the drain plug ready. Put that back in. Take the I believe T25s on these. Or are they T27s? Yeah, T27s on these. Take this off and then we can fill our primary. Now on primary oil, don't use synthetic oil in the primary with the clutch pack. Unless you buy the oil like the Lucas that is designed for wet clutches. So I always recommend just SAE 250 weight oil. It's just standard oil. It'll give good grip to the clutches. It'll lube the chain up and the sprockets and all that. So you don't have to go fancy in your primary oil. You can in your motor, of course, and you can in your special transmission. Use top of the line transmission oil. Synthetic all the way, but on your primary, I suggest using SAE motor oil. And it'll save you a couple dollars as well. Now, even though I replaced this O-ring not long ago, you can see that when you tighten up this bolt here, it will destroy this O-ring. So I always recommend to replace the O-ring with a new one every time you pull that plug out. It's just good insurance. And we'll take some oil and we'll always put it in the rotation how the bolt goes in. Make sure it's up off that O-ring and it's off the magnet up here. All right, now that's ready to go back in. Clean off under here. All right. Torqued. Okay, these will get blue lock tighted back down as well, and with the same torque spec as the primary cover bolts. I'll leave that top bolt in. I should have brought my gun out here. It's in the house. I was working on our clothes dryer, and left my gun in the house. Need to bring it back out. Now you'll hold your cover up. Definitely don't want this thing falling and scratching and getting messed up. Okay. Now this has the rubber O-ring around it. Just kind of clean it off, look at it. You can even write the date that you changed the oil in this. I write it down in the book so that when the customer comes in and wants to know, hey, what'd you do with my bike last time? Everything's written down and recorded. Go ahead and clean that off a little bit as well. I do have this fancy little thing, if I can remember how it goes. Let's go like that. How does this thing... Like that, maybe? Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes it a little bit easier. I think it's the first time I've used this. Yeah, pretty handy. Now, you don't need this. This is just a luxury of mine. You can just kind of pour it slowly down in here. There's a cutout here where the oil can go down, and usually I hook it right on here. Let it drip down, but that was a lot faster. Now we can put our cover back on and everything's done. We can look for leaks. All right, we'll get our first one started up here. Still should be set for us to what our torque is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very good. Everything is torqued and blue lock tighted down, and there is 0 leaks anywhere that I'm feeling. All nice and dry. Very, very good. All right. So now let's go ahead and put the new rectifier on, get our footboard back on, seat back on. Well, test the stator. once we get the rectifier back on, and then see how she does. So for the rectifier, this was the old one. Now, we did not replace this last time because it tested good, and I decided to get him a little upgrade there. Nice chrome one. This has a little bit different setup than this, but still operates in the same fashion. The way this old one worked up in the bracket, okay, the bracket goes up like this, and these actually set up inside the bracket here. We'll actually run the wires on the outside so they won't go in the middle. So I can actually go ahead now and put my bolts back in, my longer bolts back in for this. All right, so we got that on the bracket itself. And our 3 wires. Okay. Then this bracket will go down over both and keep that from coming out. And then our other one over here will plug in. Only one way to plug in on that. And then our bracket. Now we'll go ahead and plug our sensor in here to that. Then we can spin this around and tuck all this goodness right up in here. I got that all crazy, but now everything is back together. All the wires are ran as they should be. So that there is a success, and that is on. Got our terminals hooked back up to the battery. Okay, we're at 12.53. Key on. Ignition. All right. So that was a success. Let's go ahead and put the floorboard on, put the seat back on, call the customer, tell him his bike is ready. All right, folks, so there you go. We've successfully fixed the charging issue on this bike. We checked all the wiring to the charging system, replaced the rectifier with a nice chrome one, replaced the stator with the best, Cycle Electric. No, I'm not sponsored by them, just a good product. New primary gasket cover, fresh oil in it, torqued everything down, tightened everything down. This bike is ready for many, many more miles now. Beautiful color. I love this color. So now we can get back to hopefully the iron head build, and got some Sportster cables to put on. I got another bike coming up with a starter issue, all kinds of stuff. And one of my subscribers is coming in tomorrow from West Virginia. Wow. The week after that, one of my subscribers has come down from Canada. Mind blowing. They're going to be saddened when they see, I feel like they're going to come in and say, this is it. But they can at least hang out with me. We can share some coffee, maybe play a game of chess or something cool like that. But for now, do me a favor. Tell your mama now I said hi.